All right, buckle up, my friend, because I am going to tell you the story about the most monumental meeting of my career and the number one thing that it taught me about influencing big, scary people. So, this isn't your normal YouTube, like boom, bam, boom. I want to talk to you straight away about what was going on. I was just named CEO of a company that was a subsidiary of a larger company. I had been interim for about 3 months, sort of won the position, if you will, proved myself. And they were thinking about our company, and it was sort of a go big or go home. They were either going to sell off the company that I ran, or they were going to invest in it big time. They were done dabbling. Like this was like assignment number two for me. And we had a meeting on the books. Of course, it moved a few times, but ended up moving to early September with all the bigwigs, like the CEO, all the C-suite of the parent company, up on what was the eighth floor, fancy room with fancy table, very intimidating. And we spent about 3 months, as you could imagine, working and reworking the financial analysis and the business case. Of course, our pitch was to go big, right? To invest in the company and what we had to offer to the parent. And, we spent so many hours having pre-meetings and, we had, of course, a PowerPoint presentation of all PowerPoint presentations. It was, I'm sure, 80 plus pages long with all the information you can imagine, all the pretty screenshots, all the financial analysis. And I was told going into that meeting that day, it was a Friday at our meeting was at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, wonderful slot. And to make matters worse, it was the same week that most of that C-suite had been holed up in closed door meetings because there was a big issue going at the parent company, financial challenges that they had to get through. So, needless to say, I was told and sort of had a feeling that going into this meeting at best, I was going to get a no decision. Of course, at worst, they were going to decide to sort of not go big and to sell off the company. And when I went into that meeting, I of course went with the presentation. But there was one thing that I spent the most time on in the last few days leading up to that meeting, and it's something I call the first 45. People don't do this. And I don't always do this, but the gravity of this meeting was so big that I really thought I need to go in there. And when I'm given the opportunity to speak, it's not going to be for long because before you know it, these are heavy hitting individuals. They're going to want to weigh in. Like I'm going to seize control quickly. And so my thought was the first 45 seconds were absolutely critical to me laying the foundation. And this wasn't rocket science. This first 45 wasn't anything other than a really concise, influential, opinionated, and factual executive summary. That's all it was. If I picture it on my computer, it was maybe 7 or 8 bullets that I actually put in like size 50 font because I wanted to make sure I memorized it. I didn't come in, of course, with those talking points, but I wanted to be able to look at it and just have it locked into my brain. And so when I was given the opportunity, I was first introduced by my boss's boss and then handed over to me to sort of kick off the meeting. I went through that first 45 and laid out in less than a minute my case for why I thought we needed to go big and what we were going to talk about. And I will never forget what happened next. There was an executive that, quite frankly, in the first couple months when we were doing our pre-meetings, the meetings for the meetings, pooped all over my business. He was new to the company. He didn't understand the value. He thought we were whatever. We thought we were crap. So I did not expect him to be an advocate. And I'll never forget, stop talking. And the first person that weighed in was that guy. And he said this, well, Erin has a very good strategic argument. Now, don't ask me what he said after that because I pretty much blacked out for the next few minutes. And from then, what ensued was I had laid the foundation. I hadn't done the page turn. I hadn't done a long summary. I hadn't taken forever to get to here's my recommendation. I laid it all out in the first 45 seconds. And then let the conversation ensue. Now, I wasn't a fly on the wall for the rest of that conversation. There were times, in fact, it's a long story, but my new soon to be boss was actually opposing my opinion. Well, I was still reporting to somebody else, and I very cordially but very precisely sort of countered his argument. So, what happened, ironically, in about 45, it was about 40 minutes. I think it was about 3:40. I'll never forget. Our parent CEO looked at us and said, well, why can't you do this investment in 2 years instead of three? And essentially said, go forth, go quicker, go bigger. We agree with you. You have our permission. We're going to go with the go big option. And it was such a monumental time in my career. There were so many people's careers and work at stake. And I was the only one let into the room. They wouldn't even let my CFO in. They had sort of culled down the meeting to a smaller group. And I truly believe that that first 45 was key. So I tell you all of this because the next time you're going into a big pitch meeting, it might be sales, it might be an internal meeting, you might be defending a business case, you might be defending an organizational change, you might be presenting a new product or vision or idea, strategy document. Focus on the first 45. Do all the legwork, understand the numbers, know the background, but know that that first 45 second, those first like 6 to 8 bullets, I want you to come out confidently and influentially and look at everybody in the eye and with confidence give them a summary of everything that you would have done if you had a full hour to go through that deck. And then let them have the autonomy, let them have the conversation, let them poke the holes. And I can't wait to see what happens.